In first-century Palestine, Jesus ascends a hillside near Capernaum, drawing a diverse crowd of about 5,000 people, fishermen, farmers, and even Roman soldiers. The Sermon on the Mount begins here, challenging societal hierarchies. Archaeological evidence shows such gatherings were rare, as religious teaching typically occurred in synagogues. The dry terrain symbolizes spiritual thirst, while Jesus' elevated position foreshadows his authority as the new Moses delivering divine wisdom. Jesus' opening words, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," would have shocked his audience. In Koine Greek, ptokos, poor, implies utter destitution. Historical records show that first-century Jews associated material poverty with divine punishment. Yet Jesus subverts this by declaring spiritual humility, not ritual purity or Torah scholarship, as the path to God's kingdom. This directly contradicted the Pharisees' belief that blessings followed strict law-keeping. The Pharisees, identifiable by their blue-tasseled robes and phylacteries, murmur in disapproval. Josephus records that this sect controlled temple worship and viewed poverty as moral failure. Jesus deliberately confronts their theology of earned righteousness. A Talmudic text, Barakot 28b, later admits spiritual arrogance as Judaism's greatest danger, validating Christ's warning about religious elitism that still resonates today. A leprous beggar kneels apart from the crowd, embodying poor in spirit. Levitical law required such outcasts to shout unclean. Leviticus 13:45. Yet here he silently prays. Archaeological finds of first-century mikvahs, ritual baths, prove purification obsessions, making this man's raw humility revolutionary. Jesus later heals similar outcasts, showing God's preference for contrite hearts over ceremonial perfection, a theme echoed in David's Psalm 51. Jesus gestures toward heaven while explaining true riches. The Greek basileia, kingdom, implies God's active reign, not just a future destination. Recent Dead Sea Scroll studies reveal contemporary Essenes also preached humility, but Jesus uniquely ties it to divine inheritance. His layered teaching combines Isaiah 61's promise to the poor with Jeremiah's condemnation of empty ritual, Jeremiah 20:16, establishing a new covenant paradigm. Peter and John, still wearing fish-scented tunics from their abandoned nets, grapple with Jesus' words. As former disciples of John the Baptist, who preached repentance to all, they now understand humility transcends social class. The disciples' later writings, 1 Peter 5:5, James 4:6, prove this lesson took root. Historical fishing boat discoveries confirm their working-class background, making their transformation profound. A wealthy landowner, likely a synagogue ruler based on his fine linen, clutches his tzitzit fringe in distress. Jesus' teaching confronts his reliance on both wealth and Torah-keeping for salvation. Roman tax records show only 8% of Jews owned land, making this man's internal struggle emblematic of privileged spiritual blindness. A warning repeated in Jesus' camel through the needle's eye parable, Matthew 19:24. In a radical act, Jesus shares flatbread with tax collectors, notorious for corruption, and a repentant prostitute. The Greek hamartalos, sinners, specifically denotes those violating Torah. Mishnah records show religious Jews avoided such contamination. Yet Jesus demonstrates that acknowledging spiritual poverty, not avoiding sinners, brings God's favor. This table fellowship foreshadows the Last Supper's inclusive covenant. As the sermon concludes, Jesus' call demands existential surrender. The Greek ptosos root appears again in Revelation 3:17's warning to the wretched Laodiceans. Modern archaeology confirms Laodicea's wealth, proving Jesus' warning against self-sufficiency transcends eras. His raised hands mirror Moses' posture, Exodus 17:11, positioning himself as the new mediator of God's grace through humility. The final image transcends time. The beggar, now cleansed and clothed in white, enters pearly gates while the Pharisees' fine robes dissolve. This echoes Jesus' Lazarus parable, Luke 16:19-31, and Paul's teaching that God chose the weak. 1 Corinthians 1:27. Catacomb art from 200 AD confirms early Christians cherished this upside-down kingdom, where spiritual poverty becomes eternal wealth.